Hey YouTube, Lawler here. We're going to be breaking down our first weekend of RLCS. We've got our top 16 officially confirmed for the RLCS 2025 EU Birmingham Major Open 1. It's a lot of words. We're going to probably shorten that to RLCS 2025 EU Open 1. It's a lot of words. We'll try to do our best, but that's kind of the true naming convention for it. If you guys got better suggestions, let me know in the comments down below. Either way, we went through our top 32 teams as a quick re-entry into the RLCS before we actually break down the results, talk about the surprises, the big storylines. If you guys are unfamiliar, we start with a double elimination bracket. EU had roughly 1,500 teams sign up. It was like 1,400 and change. After we did that, we did a massive double elimination bracket. You played 3 matches, try to make it through the upper bracket. You then played another 3 matches, which then qualified you into the top 32. Once you get into the top 32, they take the top seeds and they cut them in half. 4 for Group A, 4 for Group B, and then they take the other ones and put them down and fill it in. So you have the ability to say you have 16 teams in one group of Swiss and 16 teams in another group of Swiss. So you're talking 66 best of 5s went down this past weekend on Sunday. It's a lot. What's even worse is the only way to watch it is if the teams themselves were streaming. So that is what brings us to now. We are going to go through those 66 best of 5s in a very quick recap for both the groups. And then I'm going to do my best to show you guys what you can expect for the GSL bracket, the top 16, how that's going to look. We've got some examples that have already been put out. I've already done all the figuring things out. We've got prediction pages for you guys. Again, lock in. Subscribe if you guys enjoy the content. If you like all the information, leave me comments down below. Well, let's jump into it. First things first, we're going to talk about Group A. These are 16 teams ranking anywhere from number 1 all the way down to 32. You can figure it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then like 9, 10, 11, 12, and then another bit of a break. After that, 21, 22, 23, so on until they get down to the final. And then they have the other half in the other side of the bracket. But with that in mind, some things of note. Number 1, the top 2 teams are the teams that we expect to be at the top. K-Corp and Gentlemates, who I have as my 1-2. K-Corp did drop a match in one of theirs to Tanaka, who they had to play. Synergy, on the other hand, had to play Gentlemates. So again, your 1-2 stays as 1-2. No surprises there. I will say, despite it being a 9-0 for Mates, I personally wasn't the most convinced. I will say they did have some tougher matches having to play against the Wild team and stuff of that nature, but there is something that I think is in the air for that Stormtroopers team that is unsigned, and they're playing with their lives on the line, trying to get signed. I think already you're starting to see, and I know it's a way too soon thing. We talked about it in my power ranking and tier list type thing. I think Gentlemates is probably the one on the outside looking in. Although we did see that a lot last season, where they then got to LAN, barely scraping through the open qualifiers, and then dominated on LAN. Could see a recreation of that. We'll have to wait and see. If you guys don't know the Tanaka roster, that's the X-Oxygen now with Oli. Their only loss coming to K-Corp. Other than that, looking pretty dang solid. Most of the middle of the pack teams are the middle of the pack teams. No difference there. Things to pay attention to. Literally all the teams that we said were going to be in the 5 to 8 category, the teams that are going to be top 16s, are in the top 16. We didn't see, in my opinion, any big surprises here. I think everything went according to plan for this group. The only one that might be a little bit surprising is the Caliente roster, as if you look at who's on that team with Caliente, K-Dop, Sizen, and Growly. You're like, okay, you've got K-Dop, who hasn't been towards the top in a while. You've got Sizen, who's that former world champ coming back, and then Growly, who's been kind of in that in-between, able to come in, and they're doing it 3-2 with a better game differential, if not tied with some of the other ones. So good to see them actually bouncing back and playing pretty aggressive on that regard. Novo is one of the biggest surprises for everybody, as it is a full Italian team, which we have not seen in ever, I don't think. We've always seen Cookser kind of limp in and try to compete and stuff, but good to see some Italians make it through. I think that was pretty cool. Hyder and Dead Monster and stuff are both very, very good. Mala, if you guys don't know, has been around the space for a while, so there's some old heads. Not in the case of like me, old head, but people that have been around the space for a long time, so good to see them making top 16s. Cool to see that, but very predictable, I will say, across the board. And then Ascend being that last seed, they're going to have a tough first round matchup. These are the young kids that I'm very keen on paying attention to. Gyuk, Matt, and Nico, all very talented. All ones to pay attention to. Names that you may see get poached in the trade window when that comes around after the first, if they don't do something themselves. So very excited for that. Same with Start Point, which we'll talk about here in a second with Eugen, is one of those young players too. On top of that, some teams that you will still want to pay attention to. Arrogance, not too shabby. Underperforming in my opinion. Wild is a team that I consider being consistent top 16 as well as Sick. We'll see how those play out though. The difficulty, as I've mentioned, if you do not make top 16 and you are not competing well in the first regional or the first open, you are already in a troublesome situation. Having to play catch up is not going to be easy, especially when whoever makes it out of the next stage as a top 8 gets guaranteed to be in this stage. They don't have to go through open qualifiers anymore. I'll talk about that again at the end. We go over to Group B. Again, very similar. The biggest surprise, though, number 1, Vitality losing to Fast Forward in round 1, and then Fast Forward not even making top 16. EU comes out of the gate swinging. I even tweeted it. EU's EUing already. How Vitality is dropping that game is pretty wild. Very, very wild for them. And then, of course, in EU fashion, they still don't make it. They lose to Stormtroopers. They lose to Redemption. And then their final loss is to Salacio. That is a series they have to win. There is no excuse for that. So, pretty surprising upset there. Outside of that, the rest of these names should be all familiar. None of these should be surprising to you. NIP, obviously my number 1 team, the team that I'm most keen on, dropping their only game to save the game. That is the former veterans. That is the extra Astral team, which should be very fun to watch, in my opinion. Stormtroopers, the ex-Dignitas team, going perfect. That's your 1-2. Selfishly, I wanted to watch Stormtroopers and Vitality play. I want to know what it was going to look like. Prismatic, shame on you for that comment in chat. RRG, that's the RizX roster. RizFox and G. Who's the G on that roster? I can't remember off the top of my head. RizX, RizFox, and Golfs. So good on them for going 3-1. Upset potential. Sweeping everybody else and then going to a really close game against Save the Game. So holding on against the veterans. Good for them. Vitality obviously bouncing back in a very strong fashion. Redemption, their first loss against the big boys. Charlie B, Ethan, and Pluvo. Come on. That is the most cash-like loss I've ever seen. Charlie B and Ethan are actually pretty solid. But you can't be losing those games. Either way, EU's a little bit losing, and then they bounce back. Who do they play? They play them a boom. Start Point. So that's a pretty good win for them to beat Start Point and then win over Fast Forward. That's fair. And then Salacio is the big surprise, I think, for everybody. For them to get that win at the end, I think is huge. There is a lot of love and attention given to these guys as well. Wavy in particular has been talking about how good they truly are. At the end of the day, the biggest takeaway from this, look how many French are in this. It's like, what, 22 out of 48. Thank you. Quick maths. But you're talking just shy of half. It's wild. 22 out of 48 being French. I'm pretty sure is what I think the stat was. I haven't counted it and I haven't double checked it, but yeah, pretty insane. More French players to pay attention to. Who would have thought? So what that does and what the problem is then creates who is playing who in the GSL bracket. Again, if you guys need to know what the GSL bracket is, it is a weighted double elimination. So your high seeds are playing against each other. So there is a format that we see in Swish called bushels, which basically is taking what your seed is into account going into every round. So the highest seeded teams get most favorable matches. It basically gives them a strength of schedule weight. The way that this is being done is going to be difficult because we don't exactly know what RLCS is using for their seeding or what their tiebreakers are or how that stuff applies. What we do have is two things. Number one, I asked you guys, how's everybody feeling about it? And overall, a lot of surprises. A lot of people excited to see how some of the new players are doing. A lot of people are being like, wow, that's not enough organizations. I think there's 6 teams backed by orgs as compared to 8 that we saw last year. That's a little bit of a regression. A lot of people excited to see. People are enjoying the format. People enjoying the upsets and stuff. Overall, people are saying, hey, it looks pretty good. It's competitive. I'm actually really excited for the format. Most people in chat as well have been talking about how they actually think this is a really, really good format. Now, the thing that you have shown on the left-hand side here, we're actually going to swap these for you all, is trying to figure out what the seeding is going to be. If we look at South America looks like they have populated their matches. We do have these. So what I went ahead and did is I tried to equate them to where they are and see where they end up in the bracket. And we get this as the current format. So they are going to be bringing over A1, A4, and A5 and bringing those into Group B. And then they'll do the inverse where it is B1, B4, B5 and bring those into Group A. There's two reasons that they do this. Number one, the biggest reason for doing it is these matches. The reason why they have them swapped, or they usually try to invert them, is because if things go perfectly and results happen where the high seed always wins, it is basically making it favor towards the seeds that are at the top, which it should. It should favor the highest seeds. If you guys don't see this, this is something that Gibbs talks about a lot when they try to inverse these and they try to create separation, having the certain teams play each other in that middle of the pack round. They do manipulate them a little bit just to make sure that the best, if things go as they should, because again, we can't make adjustments. We can't make changes based upon the like weirdness of upsets. You are trying to reward the teams seeding. If things are done appropriately, this team that is like the 3 seed should always beat the 5 seed. The 4 seed should always beat the 5 seed. So because that is done, you have to assume that the best team or the better team should beat the lesser team. While yes, these are the most equivalent between 4 and 5, it's going to be the most competitive match, hypothetically. You have to operate with the format as if the high seed is going to win. So they do try to manipulate and bring those over. The other side of it too, like people are saying in chat, it is to avoid rematches. They're not trying to have the same teams that played each other in Swiss play each other again. So that is the reality of how things go. So they do have these set up between the groups. And because of that, we have all the teams and how they performed here. Not that you guys can see this behind my camera, but we have like A1, A2, A3, A4. We plug these in, and this is what we get for our first round, assumed. This is what we should be getting when the bracket fills out. So in this bracket, this should be NIP versus Ascend. This should be Vitality versus Redemption. This should be Tanaka versus Caliente. And then this should be Mates versus Novo. And then when we go to Group B, same things. K-Corp versus Salacio, Synergy versus 100%, RRG versus Save the Game, and Stormtroopers versus Starpoint. Now, it looks like Cody, if you guys don't remember Cody, there used to be a guy named Adam Core in the space who did the prediction sheets. Now Cody is the one who's doing it. He has built these already for the main event on who's playing who, what things are going to look like. We will have to wait and see. Now, I'm telling you guys this based upon what things are looking like. It looks like they should be okay. But there is a very good chance that by the time this video comes out, they have not yet announced officially from Psyonix what the seeds are, how they play out. Until we get that first official confirmation from the RL Esports channel, we cannot say these are 100% locked in. These are the matches that are going to be played, so on and so forth. So when that does happen, when we do have the updates, things like this will be updated. I will also make sure to update my seeding this thing. So moving forward every single week after we finish and we do our recap, at the end of the recap, I will always include what the matches will be, because unfortunately, for whatever reason, the RL Esports channel seems to lull behind a little bit. They tend to take their sweet time. Part of that is also them not working on the weekend. But I have intentions every single week. When you guys see my recap video, at the end of the recap video, you should be able to see what is the assumed matches going into the following week, or NA or EU or whoever is playing in that 32 down to 16 match. So what's going to be a little bit different this week or this year, there is a week break in between some of the things. So EU is going to finish this weekend coming up, and then they have a week off. NA will start, and then we'll have NA week off. Then EU Open qualifiers will begin. So there will be a week gap in between some of those things. So again, if you guys have any questions on that, check out the roster document down below. There is a video that actually explains the format, the schedule, how that stuff all applies, the new marketing program, all that kind of crazy stuff. My YouTube channel has a video. If you guys are trying to figure out what the heck's going on in the scene, what the heck is going on in the esport, just look through the search option on my YouTube. You will find it. Either way, that is what we have for the breakdown. That is what we've got for our matchups. That's what we've got for everything. Overall, the biggest surprise, Vitality dropping an early game and then Fast Forward not making it. I think that one caught me off guard. But other than that, I think people are pretty happy competition's back. It seems like it was pretty well received. Downfall is there was no official RLCS bracket or broadcast. We didn't get to see the actual like visuals that are be coming from Blast and the production team. We will not get that until this weekend. Either way, that's going to do it for today's video. Any questions, let me know in the comments down below. I know it's a bit of a wordy one. We'll catch you next video. Peace.